It felt a bit like the the karma sort of chat, didn't it? Really about it might not have been meant like that. It might have been like what Sarah was saying, that he should have probably had some PR and someone said put a suit on, but it sounded like he was being disparaging towards people, the homeless people, and comparing him to that. It just came out all wrong. But then, considering this is a man who, as gifted as he is, he's the polar opposite when it comes to the English language. He's mangled more metaphors than I can't even think of an analogy for that one. But he's just
No, you're right.
A dinosaur, isn't he?
Yeah,
you're right. On the pitch, he was sublime. But
it's another one of that team, isn't it? I mean, God, isn't there a few of them? Chris Waddle's the same. Graham Level-Headed Roberts.
That's right. Graham Zen Roberts.
Yeah.
I'm surprised
they're
he hasn't
partial to a gaff.
I'm surprised he's not in the sort of Matt Letitia camp where he's putting crime numbers on his Twitter feed and things like that.
What the anti-vax crime numbers?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Jesus Christ! I don't even know what these guys are up to. Yeah, never mind. There we are.
Anyway, I mean, just on that though, I must admit I did see Frank Lampard's comments on it. When he sort of said, with all due respect to people like Glenn Hoddle, I don't care, and he's the player, and you should just let him prove himself on the pitch. It was nice to see him come out and support a player who is probably not arrived in the best frame of mind, and to give him a little bit of open backing. That was encouraging on a personal level. I agree entirely with what Sarah said. Somebody behind the scenes should have said, for fuck's sake, man. But
that's right.
You're
asking for trouble when you do things like that. But exactly.
They get coached for this.
Yeah.
And they literally get training from in the academies, and he's been around it a long time, and there's no way that Pochettino would have allowed him to turn up to a game like that either. So, or Mourinho, or any of the previous managers he's got. There's no excuse for it other than, I don't know, arrogance.
Maybe he was just really D-mob happy to not be at Tottenham anymore. Felt first day of holiday.
Exactly.
Well, that's his problem, isn't it? It's been on holiday for 2 years. He's gone to Everton to continue it. I mean, is he not embarrassed he's gone on a free, do you think? I mean, I know it's a free dressed up, don't get me wrong. It's about
it is
£40 fee, but, it is still a bit embarrassing for a player of his calibre.
Yeah, if I was him, I'd think, that's kind of not good, is it? Not a good look. No.
And if you're Everton... Are you selling him on in this? If you're Everton, are you selling him on in the summer for 20 million, sticking your middle finger up at Daniel Levy? Because it crossed my mind.
I think Daniel would have covered that one.
Yeah.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
It is all structured in a very clever way to avoid their financial fair play limits, isn't it? Because they're in the shit money wise, aren't they? So
they are.
Yeah, he's done them a bit of a favour if he does perform. He's done them a bit of a favour, old Daniel. Hasn't he?
I think what we've got in return, because that money doesn't feel enough for what we've done. So is it that we get first dibs on a player or something?
He's probably going to go on.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say he apparently could go up to as much as 40 million if a number of conditions are met. So it's not a terrible deal if he does have a decent couple of seasons.
Well, this is it. I mean, if you get 30 million for a player that's hardly played for the last 2 years, and repeated managers haven't wanted to play him, so I think it's not a bad deal.
There's also quite a funny parallel here with what Sarah was saying earlier about Ndombele. I think it was Sarah anyway, about him sort of marking his own card, because if you think we've said that the buyout clause on his loan is enormous, isn't it? It's somewhere in the region of £60 million. Which clearly they're not going to pay it.
No.
So that's a putting other clubs on mark, and you'd think that somebody would be saying to him, this isn't the sort of thing that is going to encourage other teams to pay 60 million quid for you. If you don't want to go back to London, you might want to shut your mouth. Because this kind of attitude is followed you. This, this just it just confirms what everybody believes about you already, that you've got a bad attitude.
Yeah.
When people come to negotiation and taking a big gamble on a player like you've got to be able to prove that actually all that stuff they said about you in London wasn't true.
Exactly. Otherwise, you end up at Everton on a free transfer.
Yeah.
and Dumbelly had another boneheaded comment, wasn't he? I think he says, "I've had 5 managers at Spurs. I needed a change." What, for a 6th manager?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a common denominator
there,
here, Tanguy.
He probably just wanted a bit of home comforts, but I don't think he's going to come back and make a success of Spurs. I don't think the Premier League is for him. Yeah. But as you said, even if they can agree a deal with Spurs and Spurs go, we'll cut our losses and we'll take 40 million, no one's going to be paying those wages.
No, I think PSG will come in for him and pay the money. Maybe not
only if he does
million. Well, I think if he goes back to France, he'll be happy and he'll play well.
Well, he's got what, 4 months to prove it.
Yeah.
You have to remember, pretty much all of Europe was after him. He was a coup at the time. A lot of the big clubs were massively after him. So there's still a chance that hopefully, if he performs well at Lyon, that some of the big clubs might come sniffing back after him.
Yeah, that's very possible.
And maybe just the timing of COVID, because he obviously arrived in a new country and then went into a lockdown.
Yeah,
that probably didn't help.
Period.
So
agree.
I'm not sure how happy I would be in that situation on my own in a funny country, but I have a bit of a harsh view, and he's paid handsomely enough to just turn up and do his job, even if you're unhappy off the pitch. I think
exactly.
If you've built your whole life to be a professional footballer, it's the one thing that's going to make you happy.
Yeah, I think you're right. So we also saw Brian Hill go to Valencia and smash it up this week. So looks like he's in line to win the Spanish Cup, the Copa del Rey. Is that right? So yet another Spurs player leaves Spurs and wins a trophy. So,
and then you got Sarr, who's won a trophy without even playing a game for Spurs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he won't win any more. That's it.
No.
But Brian Hill is due to come back, though, isn't he? I think we're just giving him game time, with a good club, so he can improve his number of games, but also perhaps he's in game play and be more ready for our team in next season, perhaps.
What does that say? I mean, Conte's come out with some things this week, really interesting stuff. And what does that say about Paratici if Conte has said, I don't want Hill in my squad, I want to send him back to wherever?
Yeah,
it's not a good look for Paratici, is it?
Well, a lot
of people. Paratici's... Sorry, carry on, Rich.
I was going to say a lot of people interpreted his comments as a sideswipe at Steve Hitchens, but I think that a couple of those deals were Paratici deals, weren't they?
They were.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say maybe his briefs changed from when he first arrived, because I would arguably say that, I can't even say either of the 2 new signings' names. So I'm just going to call him Bentley and Kulu. They're probably slightly more established stars and more experienced than Gil, I should say. And maybe that's the MO now. We're going out and we're getting not quite a Brian Gill, but more not quite a Harry Kane, and somewhere in the middle, and hoping they come good. Whereas before the brief was young.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I don't know if any of you recently heard, I think it was Dan Kilpatrick's comments, basically, that Daniel Levy still does have much more say than we think. And the deal for when we were looking at Diaz was actually more of Daniel Levy's making. So perhaps Brian Hill might have been a young prospect that Daniel Levy was after. So, Paratici might be copying the flack for it. But it looks like he very much has his paws over a number of deals that perhaps it's not all just Paratici.
But the thing is, if Daniel Levy is still involved in these things, you've got to ask the question why.
Well,
if you're going to recruit players, let Paratici and Conte recruit them? How does Daniel Levy know what a good player is? I mean, he builds stadiums and things, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He plays Football Manager and he watches the Worth as he's playing Football Manager in
Yeah, I think he
Greece.
probably does, doesn't he? Yeah.
There's got to be a certain amount of it at the end of the day, because transfers is a really big way of making revenue. But maybe we need to buy another club like Man City where you can send them in the middle.
Like a feeder club.
That's
Yeah.
like a feeder club, and that's exactly the new model that's gonna come into football, because it's just to secure the players that you need, you can't really do it. I don't think you can't stack them up in the same way that Chelsea were doing kind of 3-4 years ago, can you? Because of fair play and all of that. So it'd be interesting to see how many more of these super clubs become a thing.
Yeah.
What do you make of Conte's recent comments that seem to have really pleased the Twitter fan base in terms of like telling home truths to Levy more than any other manager's told him? And I wonder what those home truths might be.
Yeah, that's right. We don't know exactly, do we? But I imagine that Levy knows that things aren't that great, obviously, because we're not in the Champions League, etc. But I would imagine that from what I can see with Conte's interviews, he's just a very honest guy, isn't he? And he's straight up. He just wants things to work. Yeah, he just wants things to work, and he doesn't want to fuck around with inconsequential subjects. He just wants to get on with it and get it working. And it's refreshing to see. There's no other. There doesn't seem to be any kind of Mourinho politics or Pochettino riddles, or it's just.
He seems to have a pretty good bullshit radar, doesn't he? So if he thinks that he's been messed around, he's just gone. So he'll tell it as it is, because he doesn't need to suffer all the bullshit. So he'll just say, "Look, this is what it is. This is my vision. This is what you hired me for.
Yeah.
And this is it. So you either follow it or what's the point of us? Of this reciprocal arrangement?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly his approach, I think. That's what we hear. And that's what he's done at other clubs. So eventually that will happen here. But,
I think it's reaching. I think that's what us fans want to hear, because it's our fear that he'll walk away in the summer. And, if he walks away in the summer, what are we going to attract? Because
it seems to be the Conte meme, doesn't it? The walking away thing. Yeah, it's.
I think the revenue will be hurting Levy the most, because the stadium isn't full most weeks. And yes, okay, maybe we can attribute some of that to the people who cannot be bothered to follow the COVID protocols. But there are fans that are fed up, and unless the football gets better, and I think it is getting better. I tuned in Saturday night for the first time in a long time. And I was like, I'm looking forward to this. I didn't question the starting 11 because I had faith that Conte was going to pick the right team. And I had a look at the bench and I was like, oh, the two new players are on there. I'm excited to see them get minutes. And that was it. Whereas before I'd be going, what the hell is Nuno picking? Why is he doing this? What's this formation? And even before the game had started, inadvertently on the team's back.
Yeah.
And I think it's really nice that I feel comfortable and excited to watch the game. It feels a bit more like the Pochettino era, but Daniel will be well aware of the revenue drop, well aware, and that will scare him more than anything, in my opinion. So,
in fact, there was a report this week on, I can't remember who did it now. Some guy did a report on the Spurs finances, and obviously, like all other clubs, we've suffered, but also, we can make quite a lot of profit over the next few years by the structure that's in place. So it does bode well. And
he's got to get it right, though, because nobody's going to go on a Thursday night to a Europa League game, are they?
No, exactly.
It's got to be Champions League football. I say Europa League, I meant conference, but Europa League would be better than conference. But I just don't see anybody bothering for the conference.
But that stadium isn't really for Europa League or conference, is it? That's for the Champions League. That's
scarily. I could see him hiring out MK Doms. It'd probably be cheaper to rent than it would be to operate the new Spurs ground. I know it sounds silly, but it's, to open
Really?
that stadium must cost a fortune.
Yeah,
I reckon.
yeah, because all the staff and
All the
I mean, quite
staff, all
often-
the
Well, apparently-
electricity,
for the conference games, they close the top layer because obviously, you know,
the costs.
the cost of that. Yeah.
But